Today, I'm going to show you how to make this Magical Memories mini album. I used the Magical Adventure 2 paper collection from Echo Park, but of course you can use any paper collection to decorate the album. It's a simple album to make. It's 7 by 7 with a 2.5-inch spine. It's got 5 pages with hidden pockets on it. Each page has a different set of elements on it to make it interactive and fun to add pictures to and fun to go through. So without any further ado, let's get started making it. There is also a cutting guide available for a small fee in my coffee shop, but if you want to, you just follow this tutorial and I'll tell you everything you need to make it. Some people do like the written instructions, so for that I do charge a small fee. I will also have a follow-up video in showing you how I decorate the mini album. I didn't think I was going to do it at the time of making this tutorial, but I decided I might as well show you how to decorate it, so there is a separate video for that. All right, let's get started. All right, to cover the chipboard, I have 2 pieces of 8.5 by 9.5 65-pound cardstock. I'm going to take a piece of 1/4-inch double-sided permanent adhesive. I'm using the scrapbook.com brand, and I will put that on one side of the paper. I'll go ahead and peel this off, and I am going to just take this one piece and lay it right on top of the other piece. Sometimes I'll use the surface on my table to make sure it gets all lined up. It's probably the best bet. I'll put it down and burnish. So now I have one long piece. I am going to take my T-square. I don't always. A lot of times I just eyeball it, but I've been getting it a little crooked lately. Whoops. So I am just going to use the T-square and make sure it's at least as straight as I can make it. All right, and I'm going to just eyeball where the center is. Now, usually I like to have 1 inch on either side of my chipboard. But because the paper is 8.5, it really should be 9 because my chipboard is 7 inches long. So 3/4 of an inch will be fine. This piece is 2.25 by 7. I am going to take a piece of 1/4-inch double-sided adhesive and put one on that side of the chipboard and one on this side of the chipboard. I'll go ahead and burnish. Is it exactly right next to the chipboard? No, but it's close enough. I'll burnish and then use my bone folder to peel off the backing. This is a Dress Your Craft bone folder number 2. It's got a nice sharp bevel here, which helps me get off backing. Now this, again, since this is 7 by 7, I used a 6-inch roll of double-sided permanent adhesive, so it left about 1 inch uncovered, so I used the smaller tape. It's not quite 1 inch, it might be 7/8. I'm going to take this, so we've got the double-sided adhesive there. I'm going to line up the top and line up the bottom. I am not exactly 1/4 of an inch. I'm a little smaller than 1/4 of an inch. If I had to give you a measurement, I would say it's 3/16 of an inch. I'm going to burnish this before I peel off the backing. And yes, I do see that my tape did not go all the way to the edge, so I'll just add a little bit of glue. Peel off the backing. And go ahead and match this up here. All right, it's a little, as long as it's parallel to that, then we're okay. So if you want, you can add double-sided tape to the chipboard. You could add it to the paper. Because it's smaller than the 1 inch that I usually recommend, I am going to put some double-sided tape right at the edge of the chipboard. I'm not going to put it at the edge of the paper, although I know some people like to do that. I usually don't do this, but again, just because there's not as much of the paper to grab. I mean, it still would work if you wanted to just use your liquid adhesive. I'm going to burnish this real good. I'm going to go ahead and grab my scissors, and I'm going to cut off at the corner. I'm staying at least 1/8 of an inch away from the corner of the chipboard. You don't want too much more, but you don't want less either. If you by any chance cut it less, no big deal. Just take a piece of your cardstock that you just cut and just glue it onto the corner. All right, I'm going to peel off my double-sided adhesive. There we go. And one more. All right, before I fold this, I am going to use my surface and fold to get a good crease in it. Take my bone folder and further get a crease in it. All right, now I'm going to take my liquid glue, and I like to put a bead of it at the edge of the chipboard, although I didn't experiment and didn't do it at the edge of the chipboard, and you know what? It didn't make a difference. So it's just one of those things that I do because I've always done it, but it doesn't help or hinder the integrity of your cover. All right, I added some liquid glue. I'm going to fold this down with my bone folder. I'm going to pull it down in the center and get a good stick. Now, since I've got the double-sided adhesive, it's going to stick nicely. All right, I already put some next to the chipboard. I don't need very much. There we go. All right, now I'm going to take this and take my bone folder and just sort of push it in. Just to get the, you'll see there's little corners there. I'm just going to push that in. Just so those corners don't stick out. If they do, you just take your bone folder and smash them down. All right, I'll burnish and fold this over. And there's a nice corner. And I will do the same here. My original thought was that I put the glue right next to the chipboard was because it would help the paper fold, and it does, but it'll fold anyhow. All right. Now I'm going to take this part of the bone folder, it's sort of rounded, and I'm just going to lift up this cover a little bit and push it down so the adhesive on the top, well, the underside of the top, and adhesive on the bottom meet, and it will help ensure that your covers will be nice and crisp. So there is the cover. Next, I'm going to make the hinge. All right, to make the hinge, I'm using a piece of 65-pound cardstock that is 11 inches long and just a smidgen under 6.5 wide. If you want a measurement, it's 6 7/16. So just a little bit less than 6.5. What I'm going to do is score, and we're going to have sets of 2 half-inch pieces and a 3/8 inch gusset between. I'll explain as we go. So I'll start at 2 and then score at 2.5 and at 3. So there's 2 half-inch pieces or scores. So that is going to be our hinge. And then the next score is 3 3/8. That'll be our gusset. So that's the piece that's going to go flat down. Again, you'll see as we get further along. So now I'll do 2 more half-inch scores and then another 3/8 until I have 5 sets. So we'll go to 3 7/8, 4 3/8, 4 3/4, 5 1/4, 5 3/4, 6 1/8, 6 5/8, 7 1/8, 7.5, 8, 8.5. Now I make this set of 5 hinges with the 3/8 inch gusset in between quite often. So I did take a Sharpie and make marks in there so I can do it without even thinking about the measurements. Just a hint if this is the kind of thing you're going to do a lot of. Okay, so now we've got our hinge, and I'm going to turn it upside down so the bumpy side is facing up. And I'm going to fold it and burnish it in between each of those half-inch pieces. So here's half, here's half. I'm going to fold in the center of that. It's already scored. I'm just going to burnish it. And then we'll go to the next set. So you'll skip a line, fold. And if you just say that in your head, you'll get it. Skip a line, fold. Skip, fold. And skip, fold. So now you have 5 pieces that are already burnished. And so that's going to help the paper fold the way we want to. So I'm going to just pull this paper towards me. So I'm holding it down with my thumbs, and this is sort of loose. And this first hinge is going to want to come up because it's already burnished. I'm going to pull it together and sort of finger burnish it. And then I'll pull it again and get the next one and just burnish it with my fingers. Do it until we get all 5 of those hinges just sort of burnished. It's not glued or anything, not yet, but it just is training the paper. Now I'll pull all these towards me so that 3/8 gusset is going to be flat on the surface, and I'll have all the hinges facing me. So I'll take my bone folder and burnish. Now make sure they're all parallel, which you can tell at a glance if they are. Then I'm going to fold these away from me. Push that down and burnish. So there we go. There are hinges. Well, it's not really quite done because we need to glue it. So I'm going to take my glue, and I am using the glue from the Art Institute glitter, and it's called Art Glitter Glue. That's what people call it. And I just like using it because you don't need too much, and it dries clear. It does have a little bit of sheen. Of course, it doesn't always come out when I want it to. I take it and I put it in these little containers. It's just easier for me. You don't have to push so much. I do believe it's a little stuck, so that's why I have a second container, just so I can move on. So I'm going to zigzag, starting about 1/4 of an inch from the edge and ending about 1/4 of an inch from the edge. And then I'll take a bead of glue and go close to the edge of that. And then I'll turn this over and I'll squeeze that and burnish it together. Now we're going to burnish it some more, so don't sweat it. All right, I'll take my glue and zigzag, and then go make a bead of glue around it, turn this over, and burnish. Now I don't have so much glue on here that it's coming out the edge. That's why I'm staying a 1/4 of an inch away. But if you did have it, make sure you clean your fingers so it doesn't get all over the place. And I will do it again. Zigzag. Whoops. Hold this. And I like to go at the top. You really don't need to probably, but you know, you get into a rhythm. I've got some glue there. It's no big deal. No big deal. All right, zigzag. And squeeze and burnish. We'll burnish it again. Never fear. Okay, and then the last one. And squeeze and burnish. Okay, now I'm going to take my bone folder and burnish. And again, if you have glue seeping out, clean it up. And then I'll fold these the other way and burnish. Of course, I'm using the edge of my bone folder. And there we go. There is our hinge. And now here's the underside. Now, here's the thing. So you see my raw chipboard here. And you could, I'm looking at it and it doesn't look that, you could, if you wanted to, take a piece of paper. This is about 4.5 inches. And you could cut it down to just a little bit less than 7. And you could glue it here and burnish it into the cracks real good. I'm not going to worry about it because we're going to cover it with our hinge. I'll show you more as I go. If you feel like you want to cover it, if that bothers you, then go for it. I'm going to take some glue and put it in that crevice. My hinges are facing downward. So I'm just going to put it in that crevice. I just want to make sure I get enough glue. Again, I'm going to start at 1/4 of an inch and end at 1/4 of an inch from the edge so it doesn't seep. And I'm going to zigzag. Now, if you want to do circles, you can do circles. If you want to write your name, you can do that too. I just want to make sure I distribute enough glue so this stays down. And I'm just putting it in between where the hinges connect. I'm going to turn this upside down and I'm just going to eyeball it, try to get the top and the bottom even. Now I can always move it, and what I'm going to do is sort of pull this one up and make sure it is parallel to the edge of the chipboard. And then I'll do the same here. Okay, so it looks good. We still have time to move it, but we're good. Now I'm going to start. There's 4 gussets. The gusset is the part that's facing down. I'm going to start with one in the middle one, and I'm going to take my finger and just burnish that down. Then I'll move gusset to the left over to the right and finger burnish it. Now I know some people have tactile issues and you don't want to touch the paper, whatever. You can use your bone folder. And then I'll move these both over. Sometimes you feel the whole paper move. And then I'll start over here and burnish on the edge of that and go over here. And then I'm going to lift it up and make sure I'm still parallel. Now, if you're not parallel, you still have time to lift it up, add some more glue, and do it again. All right, I'm going to burnish this down to help distribute the glue. What you're sort of doing is getting the fibers of the paper and the fibers of the chipboard to commingle. You're distributing the glue so it's nice and even. And now this way your hinge is going to stick nicely to your book. And we'll repeat the process for the other side adding glue to both sides of the chipboard on either side of the channel. And I'll go up here onto that wing. I'll call it a wing because it gives you a little piece to hold on to. Okay, now I'm going to put it down. I'm going to take my bone folder. I'll start at the top and go to the bottom. Start at the bottom and go up. Distribute the glue. And now I'm going to go with a rounded part of my bone folder into this channel. Now some glue came out, so I'm going to clean it up. And go back and forth many times, just stretching the paper a little bit each time. What we want to do is have this paper hit the double-sided adhesive in that channel. And to make sure it attaches, I will open up this book, open up this cover, and burnish. And you know when it's down to the surface. And then I will burnish here and burnish again. Now you could let it dry this way, but I like to let it dry flat because otherwise you get a little bit of bubbling in the paper. I'll burnish again. And then we'll do the same for this side. I'm going to just add some glue here. And glue here, a little bit there, a little bit there on the wing. I transfer my glue and put it in these little bottles, and it comes with this little thing to keep it from drying out. Okay, so I'll burnish from the top to the bottom, bottom up. And get in this channel. Go back and forth, 15, 20 times. And I'll burnish this one more time and let that dry. I'll have my hinges all facing up. You can go back and forth and burnish the hinges several times so they will move when it's time to get the book to move. But we will just let this dry while we work on the pages. Okay, so now we're going to make the base pages. For that, you're going to need 5 pieces that are 6.5 by 6.5 and 5 pieces that are 6.5 by 7.5. Grab your scoreboard and with the 7.5 side at the top of the scoreboard, score at 1/2 inch and at 7. So what we're doing is we're making base pages that are very plain so we can add our features to the base pages. And once you've scored the paper, we're going to miter it. So I'm going to take my scissors, cut at an angle. It's easier if we start from the score line and cut up because the scissors sort of catch in that little score line. Just cut at a slight angle. It just helps hide the paper and you don't have any corners showing when you put everything together. So I will fold and burnish. And there is one of the pages. So I'm going to take this 6.5 by 7.5 inch piece and I will add glue to this tab. You don't need a heck of a lot of glue. Sometimes I put the tabs on the outside of the page. Sometimes I put it on the inside. When I put it on the outside of the page, I'm not worried about people seeing it because you're going to cover it with paper. And the benefit to that is when it's on the inside of the page, sometimes if you're putting features in, it might get hung up on that little tab. But I'm just going to burnish it real well and not worry about it. And then what we'll do is take our book with the hinge. So before we put the page in, I'll burnish one more time and make sure that the hinges will move easy. Then I'll put the first 4, fold them over to the left, and then we've got this one here. I will dry fit this. So I'm going to take this and make sure that our hinge will fit on the page. Sometimes it's a little tight. Depends on how you score, how you glue. So if it's a little tight, it's actually not tight. It fits fine. But I'll show you what you would do anyhow. You would take your scissors and just do a teeny little miter of the corner of the hinge. Just a little bit, to make sure it all fits in nicely. Then I'll add my glue to the hinge. I'm going to keep it at the top half of the hinge. So I'll start and just zigzag it, not covering the hinge completely. And I don't want it saturated, but this is an integral part of the construction of the book. So I want to make sure there's enough glue to keep everything together. Then I'll put it in, I'll go all the way down, but then I'll pull it back a bit, meaning I'm pulling it to the right. So there's the slightest gap from the edge of this base page to the bottom of the hinge. I just don't want this to be impinged when you're turning it. You want to make sure it turns easy. Also, I'm making sure that this bottom of the base page is parallel to the bottom of the cover. And then once I feel like it's good, I will go ahead and burnish. Turn it over and burnish. And then I'll do the same with the rest of the pages. I'll go ahead and miter these. Even though I feel like it's going to fit okay, this way I won't have to fight with it. So I'll take my other base pages, add glue to my hinge, put this in, make sure it's even with this last one, and then burnish it. All right, so we'll get in our base pages and then we'll get ready to do the next step. All right, so I've got all of my pages in and I've gone ahead and burnished. Just taking my bone folder, using that side edge, and then burnish a couple of times just so the pages move back and forth fairly easily. I'm going to put the book aside and start working on features. I'm going to start at the front inside cover and work to the back inside cover. It might help you if you label, I'm looking for my chalk pen, if you label the pages so you can keep up with me. So this is inside front cover. This is the front of page 1, so I do 1F, 1B, 2F, 2B, and so on. Just so you know, so you can keep up. Although, it doesn't mean you have to necessarily put it in the same order that I do. So, whatever floats your boat and makes you happy. And if you like one particular page style, for instance, what we're going to do on the inside front cover, if you like that, you could do the whole book that way. That's okay. But anyhow, let's start with the inside front cover. All right, so first of all, I want to point out that I'm using scraps, all the offcuts from when we made the pages and the cover and whatnot. And plus, I put it all in a little file folder and just use my scraps as I am able to. I think there was about a 2-inch piece left over from something, so I'm using that. And then I cut down the other pieces. So what we're going to do, we're going to first need one piece that's 4.5 by 6. 3 pieces that are 4.5 by 5, and 1 piece that is 2 by 3. We are making a small waterfall. It's going to be 4.5 by 4.5 to put your photos on. And don't fear, if you take photos and you develop them 4 by 4, that's okay. Look at your photos. I bet you've got some room on either side or top and bottom that you can cut off of the photos and make them 4 by 4. And they'll fit nicely onto here. Now I also am using some magnets. The magnets I get are from a company called Total Elements. They sell the magnets. They sell some of the larger ones with adhesive, but the adhesive is very thick, and I like to get them without any adhesive. I just keep them as they come. These are small ones. These are maybe 3/16. I'll use these for just little pieces. But what we're going to use is the 3/8 size magnets today. Although I could, wait, is this 3/8? No. This is 1/4, this is 3/8. So I might use the 3/8. You'll need double-sided adhesive to use those. I find glue doesn't necessarily hold them, but once you put the paper on top, it's no big deal. So anyhow, you'll need 2 magnets as well. So let's grab our scoreboard and start making the components to go into the mini album. It is going to be that small waterfall. Oops. So it'll just have 1, 2, 3 pages, and it's going to go on the base. So the base is the 4.5 by 6 inch piece. You don't need to score that. I'm just going to put that aside. The 3 pieces that are 4.5 by 5, with the 5-inch side at the top of your scoreboard, score it at 1/2 inch. Do that for all 3 pieces. Just make sure it's lined up to the side and to the top so you get nice straight waterfall. And then this 2-inch by 3-inch piece, I'm going to put the 3-inch side at the top and score it at 1/2 inch. This is going to be the closure for the waterfall. Now, we don't miter this. In a lot of mini album making, you're going to miter your corners, meaning cut at an angle from the score line. But we're not going to do that with the waterfall. We want it nice and straight and even. So what we're going to do is take our glue and add our first piece. I'm going to add some glue, not as much as I was adding when I was making the pages and the base and all that. I'm going to just line this up, and if you need to, here, let me get the scoreboard. I'm putting it on its side. If you need a straight surface to help line things up, use your scoreboard. So put it on its side. And so what I just did is put that tab to the very top. Now I see this piece is not exactly straight. It's a little more like 4 5/8, so I'll trim it when all's said and done. Sometimes the papers I get, which I do get at a big box craft store at times, especially when I'm doing tutorials, I might use the more expensive papers. I want to erase this so in case I don't cover, we don't see it. I might get the more expensive papers from scrapbook stores, you know, the independent stores, and use that for my special mini albums. But for doing tutorials, I use the inexpensive paper. Although the Recollections paper is pretty good as far as quality, but it's never, the measurements are never perfect. When it says 8.5 by 11, it's usually 8 9/16 by 10 and 11 1/16 or something like that. It's usually off by just a smidgen. But if you know this going in, it's no big deal. I just need to check my measurements, which I didn't. All right, and we'll put this one down right under where the tab is, we're going to just match it up. I want to make sure this one side meets, which it doesn't. I'll pull it up. I might need to add glue. And there we go. Okay, and now we've got this 2" by 3" piece. I'm going to use my surface with the lines and just make sure this is centered. I'm going to add glue to the underside of this tab. And just put it right there. This is going to be our closure. And now I'll go ahead and grab some 1/4" tape. A little bit bigger would be fine, but I'm grabbing the 1/4". I'll put this so the center is a little more than 1/4" from the top of the little piece. Add my little magnet. And then I know the magnet will, I'll put a second magnet there, just let it find its match. Add a little drop of glue right there. I know where I want my tape now. I wiped off the magnet so it doesn't have all that glue on it. Add another piece of double-sided adhesive. And then I'll close this. And my magnet is there. So there is our waterfall. Now the thing is, I am going to cut off this little piece here. The thing is, we don't want to add it right now because I want to put paper down and I'm going to decorate at the end. So what I'm going to do is just tack it down. I use this ATG as a temporary adhesive. If you have a temporary something or other, I'm just going to put it down. Oh, by the way, so I still have my chipboard showing in my book. If you don't like the chipboard showing and you want to cover this with paper, you certainly can do that. I know I'm going to cover it with decorative paper, so I don't really need to cover it with cardstock. But if that's something you want to do, go ahead. So I'm just going to tack this down here until I start decorating. And there we go with inside front cover. Now we'll move on to the front of page 1. Okay, for the front of page 1, I'm going to make something fairly simple because I don't want it to get hung up with the mechanism of the waterfall on the inside front cover. So all you need is one piece of cardstock that is 6 by 6.5. I am going to put the 6" side at the top, so the 6.5 is going long ways, and we're going to score down the long way at 1/2 inch. So now we're going to miter here, and I'm just going to grab my scissors. And to miter, so we're just going to cut at an angle up to the score line. So you could go from the outside to the score line, or you can start at the score line and just sort of move your scissors and they'll sort of stop at where your score line is and then just cut up. Is it a 45-degree angle? I don't know. It might be 33.2. I don't know. It's a slight angle. All right, I'm going to take my bone folder and burnish on that score line, and then we'll add this, add this into the book. So it's going to go on the page. We're not going to put it on the hinge. It's going to go on the page. So just do your best to make sure it stays on the base page. Because if you get it on the hinge, it might get hung up when you're opening it. So I'll just put it on the bottom corner, move it over, make sure the bottom and the top are lined up, and we are good to go, and then I'll burnish it. Okay, so you could use different kinds of mechanisms to close this. I am going to use a swing tab. I'm going to use a swing tab. You could use a magnet if you wanted to. But I'm going to try to show you in this tutorial different ways of having closures that are not all necessarily magnets, because, you know, magnets can get expensive. So that's all I'm going to do for right now. I'll deal with the mechanism to close it when we're all done. Simple page, but again, so this won't get hung up on this page. We're going to make it nice and simple, and the paper will do the talking. Okay, we're going to do the back of page 1 and the front of page 2 all at the same time. You will need 2 pieces of cardstock. Well, you'll need 4. 2 pieces that are 6 by 6 3/4. And incidentally, I cut this out of 12 by 12 paper rather than using my scraps because I wanted a 6-inch piece. The smaller pieces just didn't cut it for me. And also, this way, it's easy to cut out of the pattern paper. It's easy to cut out of the 12 by 12. So anyhow, 2 pieces 6 by 6 3/4, and 2 pieces that are 2 by 7 1/2. I've already scored some of this, but the 2 by 7 1/2, we're going to put with the 7 1/2 side at the top of the scoreboard and score at 1/2 inch and score at 7. So now we'll rotate it so the 2-inch side is at the top, and I'm going to score it at 1 5/8. So it's that tick mark after the 1 1/2. 1 5/8. I normally would do it 1/2 inch, but it's such a small little piece. Again, I was using my scraps that I wanted to have a smaller tab on the bottom. So do that with both those pieces. And then your 6 by 6 3/4 with the 6 3/4 side at the top of the scoreboard, score at 1/2 inch. So what we're going to have is a pocket on the bottom and a flap on the top. I'm going to miter. So again, I'll take my scissors and put it right at that score line and cut up. I'll do that with both sides. And I'm also going to use a corner rounder. Now this one is, oh my goodness, pretty grody. But it's got 3 different sizes of round corners, and it doesn't matter what you use, just use what you have. If you didn't want to use a round corner, you could use a stub punch or a scalloped edge punch for the corner. But I'm just using my largest size and punching the bottom piece, so that's the piece opposite where our score lines are. For the 2 by 7 1/2 inch piece, we're going to miter. So we have an X created by the score line. We're going to cut right straight across that. And we'll do that with the other side as well, right straight across it. And then we'll miter at the top and at that other top piece. All right, fold and burnish on our score lines. I mean, that goes without saying, right? And then we'll pull in our book. All right, for the pocket, I'm just going to add glue to the bottom tab to start with. And I'll line this up on the page to the bottom and to the sides. And burnish. Now I'm going to leave these open for right now. We'll get to them in a second. Let me take the other pocket and fold and burnish on our score lines. Add glue to that bottom little tab and add this to the bottom of 2F. Okay, let's leave those alone for now. I'm turning this on its side so we can deal with these flaps. Let me fold and burnish on those score lines at the top. And I'm going to add glue. All right, so this will go on the top of the page. Of course, I have everything turned sideways. And it's going to be about 1/4 inch from the edge on each side. And it will be 1/4 inch from the bottom of the page. I am just eyeballing it, making sure it's lined up with the very top edge of our page. So I've got it down, I'll burnish, and then I'll open this up and burnish again. And I'll add this piece in real quick. And do the same. I guess I'll turn it this way so I can see it. Line it up, be about 1/4 inch away from the side of the page. It'll be 1/4 inch away from the bottom. Make sure it's nice and parallel to the bottom. And burnish. So finally, after how many years I was in grade school learning geometry, it's finally coming into play. All right, so now I'll open that up. So we've got our pockets. So the reason I left it open is I wanted to show you a couple of tips. So I'm taking some cellophane tape, scotch tape, whatever you want to call it, and I will cut off a piece about 6 inches. And what I'm going to do is put this on the edge of that tab. So the reason I'll do that is when we glue this piece and decorate this page, our pattern paper may not fill up the page. I'm going to grab just a piece of cardstock. So our pattern paper may just be this far down to the bottom. I mean, we'll put it under here. And it might not go to the bottom. So then that means when you add something into the pocket, it'll get hung up where this tab meets with the paper. So by adding that tape, it makes things slide easy. Now, I don't know at this point, well I do, but let's pretend I don't know what paper I'm going to use here. So I don't know if I'm going to have it go all the way down or I'm going to take a scrap that is, oops, 5.5 inches as opposed to 6.5 inches. So we don't know if it's going to go all the way down. Do you follow? So anyhow, I'll add the tape and then I'll glue the tabs to the side. And that'll make it work for me regardless of what size paper I use. It'll go in and it won't get hung up. But I just realized something. So I don't know about you, but I save all of my scraps until I get to the point where I either use them or lose them. And I'm running out of tape. I don't have too much. I need to pick some up, but I don't want to run out in the middle of the project. So I realized I have all these scraps of paper. So why don't I use paper instead of the cellophane tape? I'm going to just cut off a little piece. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to get covered with our pattern paper. So I just sort of put it in the pocket because it's a little bit bigger. So this piece is just about 6 inches. So I'm sort of putting it in the pocket. I'll add glue to the side tabs. Add glue to my little scrap paper. It doesn't even have to be the same color as your page. And you could even use copy paper if you wanted to. Now I'll close this and burnish. So now I'll cover this, of course. The top of this is going to be covered with at least a 5.5 inch piece of paper. But if it doesn't come all the way down to the bottom, that's okay because it's still going to slide in without a problem. So anyhow, that was just a little trick that I came up with. And in the interest of saving magnets, we're going to use a different kind of closure. And I'm going to put a line here. I'm going to write string. So I remember to put my string on before I decorate. Because I don't know about you, but I forget what I intend sometimes. It might be like the next day or the next week that I go back to finish something. So I always put little notes on there just so I remember. All right, so that was the back of page 1, the front of page 2. We're moving on to the back of page 2. All right, so we are going to work now the back of page 2, the front of page 3. Well, let's do the back of page 2. So you'll need 2 pieces of cardstock. One piece that's 4.5 by 7.5. One piece that is 3 by 7.5. I'm going to put them on the scoreboard with a 7.5 side at the top. Score at 1/2 inch and at 7. And the smaller one we're going to rotate, and I'm going to score it at 2.5 with the 3-inch side at the top. Score at 2.5. This one, the 4.5 by 7.5 with the 7.5 side at the top, score at 1/2 inch and at 7. So the one with the 3 score lines will go on the bottom. I'm going to miter. So to miter, we're going to cut across the score lines to create an X just right across the center of that for both of those. And then I'll miter at the top and miter at the top. All right, we're good with that one. Now I guess we can, I'm not going to miter at the bottom. Let's miter at the top. Just cut across those score lines. There we go. Let's fold and burnish on these score lines. And fold and burnish on these score lines as well. Okay, pulling the book. So this is for the back of page 2. Going to take this bottom tab and add glue to the bottom tab. And burnish that in. So we're good with that. All right, I am going to take some tape and add some tape to this. I'll go ahead and show you that new trick, but we're just going to use the old standby and add some tape. All right, don't glue this down yet. We're going to take this 4.5 by 7.5. And so what I want to do is add this. There's not a bottom piece to this, but that's okay because we'll use the bottom of the pocket that's going to go in front of it. So add glue. Put this right down to the bottom. I mean, stay about an 1/8 of an inch away from the bottom. And then we'll add glue to these tabs. And glue that on top of the one we just glued. And there we have a stacked pocket. Okay, now for the front of page 3, we're going to just put a belly band. So you'll need a piece that's 1 5/8 by 7.5. It's a weird size. It must have come from my scraps, I guess. And you can make it whatever size you want, but I'm doing 1 5/8 by 7.5. Score it with the 7.5 side at the top at 1/2 and score at 7. I'll fold and burnish on these score lines. And this is easy. I'm not even going to miter. We're going to add glue to the tab and glue it in the center of the page, going up and down. So we'll just go like this. I'm going to eyeball it. And there we go. All right. So that is back of page 2, front of page 3. Okay, for the back of page 3 and the front of page 4, you're going to need 2 pieces of cardstock. One that is 4 5/8 by 4 1/8 with the 4 5/8 side at the top of the scoreboard. Score at 1/2 inch. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn this over. Score at 1/2 inch. This one, 3 5/8 by 4 1/8 with the 3 5/8 at the top. Score at 1/2 inch. So what I'm going to do is take advantage of the cut-aparts in the collection that I'm using and make just quick little pages with the cut aparts as sort of an accent, but yet you'll be able to use the full page for photos. So now you could do it in any direction you want. I am going to do it this way, but you can do it this will be for a 4x4 cut apart, so you can put that at the top, you can put it at the bottom, at either side, and you can put it at the bottom of the page and the top of the page here, and that's probably what I'll do. But again, you know, look at your cut aparts and decide what you're going to use. So I'm going to add glue and put this about 1/2 inch down from the top on the far left hand side of the page. I'll just burnish. And then this one, which is for a 4x4 cut apart, I'll put on the right hand side of the front of page 4, about 1/2 inch from the bottom, the right hand side of the page, and just burnish. So these I will have to use a magnet because I don't want to put anything in the center of it. I'm just going to use magnets. And that makes me realize that the waterfall, instead of having this, I could have just tied ribbons at the top and bottom. In fact, I still can. And I might go back and do that just to show you, again, a different kind of closure instead of magnets. So, well, I'll think about that when I'm decorating. I got some glue there, but that's okay. We'll cover it up. That's it. Real simple. That's all we need for 3B and 4F. So we get to move on to the back of page 4 and then the front of page 5. All right, we're going to work on 4B and 5F, but 4B we'll start with. So for 4B, you will need one piece that's 3.5 by 3.5. So it's where we can go and find our scraps. And two pieces that are 4.5 by 6.5. Incidentally, you'll need one that's 4.5 by 6.5 for the next page. So if you're cutting 2, you might as well cut 3. And then a mat for 4B is 5.5 by 6.25. I haven't been cutting the mats or telling you the mats to use. I always leave that up to you because it really should be based on the scraps you have. I will always am mindful of your photo size. So a 4.5 by 6 or 4 by 6 photo. So, you know, do 4 1/8 by 6 1/8 at the smallest, but you never know. But this mat needs to be a little wider. So I'm cutting a mat 5.5 by 6.25. I'm going to put that aside and we will grab the scoreboard and the 4.5 by 6.5, both of these with the 4.5 side at the top, you will score at 1/2 inch. All right, I'm going to put those aside and we'll deal with this 3.5 by 3.5 piece. So 3.5 by 3.5, we're going to score on all 4 sides. So you're going to score at 1/2 inch and then at 3, rotate it and score at 1/2 inch and then at 3. Now I'm going to take my, you could use scissors if you want, but I want a straight cut. Oh, before I do that, I'm going to miter. So there are 4 X's in the corners created by your score lines. Just cut straight across all 4 of those corners. Okay, now I'm going to take it, put it in my paper trimmer, and I'm going to line it up right across 2 corners. So put the 2 corners in your trimmer, or just cut across with scissors and just cut down like that. So you have 2 pieces. Alrighty, let us grab the book. Grab the book and put everything in. Oh, let's miter these. Let's just miter. And I guess we can fold and burnish on our score lines as well. Fold and burnish. fold and burnish. And fold and burnish on these guys. If you feel like you want to trim the miters, you can do that, but we're going to cover this with paper. All of this is going to be covered with paper. Put those aside. So we will take one and put one on the left side and then one on the right side. So I'll add glue to the tab, and it's going to go over to the left, line it up with the bottom and the edge and the top, and that's good. And we'll do the same with this. And add it onto your base page, not onto the hinge. Burnish. Open it up and burnish. Okay, now close this, and then we'll take one of these corner pieces and put it on the left. So we're going to put the sides, the edges, on the side and the bottom of the page. So this one will go here, and that will go there. And we'll do the same over here. So we'll glue that one onto the right side, and then the photo mat will keep the page closed. That's all we need to do for 4B. Now let's move on to the front of page 5. And for the front of page 5, you'll need a piece that is 4.5 by 6.5. With the 4.5 side at the top, you'll score at 1/2 inch. Okay, so for the pocket on the front of page 5, you'll need a piece that's 2.5 by 7.5. With the 2.5 side at the top, score at 1/2 inch. With the 7.5 side at the top, score at 1/2 inch. End at 7. And we will go ahead and miter this one. Cut across the score lines. And let's fold and burnish on the score lines. Now I've already put on the flap, and I actually cut it wrong, so I had to redo it. So I already put on the flap, which was 4.5 by 6.5. So with the 4.5 side at the top, I scored it at 1/2, added it to the right hand side of that page. I'll add glue to the long tab on this pocket, and we're going to put this on the left hand side of the page. Opposite the right hand side is what I meant to say. Burnish. And if you want, you can add tape or scrap or whatever. We'll glue down the tabs and burnish. I'm going to sort of pinch it up here because I want this to open. All right, so now for this page, we have the mat that's 5.5 by 6.25. And if you add it there, now you've got a closure and you've got an extra photo mat. So this will come out, and then you've got lots of room for photos. All right, and then for this, we just take our photo mat and put it in there, and there's another closure. So that's 2 more closures without using magnets. All right, now we're moving on to the back of page 5, and then we will attack the inside back cover, and then that is all. That is it. So let me go ahead and work on that next. All right, for the back of page 5, you'll need 2 pieces of cardstock. State that again. 2 pieces of cardstock that are 4 3/4 by 4 1/4. With the 4 3/4 side, score at 1/2 inch on both of those. And then you'll also need a piece that is 4 3/8 by 4 1/4. I know these are teeny tiny measurements, but it'll work out. So what this is another opportunity for 4x4 photos. I'm not going to miter this in this case, but I will fold and burnish on the score lines. So here's the 4 3/8, 4 1/4 going up and down. I'm going to take one piece and with the tab, so the tab is facing that way. Here's the 4 1/4, so they're both 4 1/4. Slide this and then push that tab to close. So you'll see there's just about 1/8 of an inch on the left side. I will burnish, I will add glue and burnish. Okay, so we have this folder. Now I've got this, the left side, we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to take my 4 3/4 by 4 1/4 piece, and with the tab on the left side, I'm going to match it all up. I'll turn this over and glue. Fold this down and burnish. So we have this and this. So the reason I did not make this 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 is because or this one 4 1/4, 4 1/4, and made it just 1/8 of an inch bigger, is so then this will open easily. If they were the same size, it just doesn't flow as easily. So you just have to remember that when you're covering this, you wouldn't want to use a 4x4 cut apart unless you cut it a little funky. So anyhow, there's this. And the closure we're going to use, this is where I'm going to use the ribbon closure, since I already put the magnet down on that front. So we're not going to put this on in the book yet. I will add my little ATG or temporary adhesive or whatever and put it on the page so I remember when it comes time for that. So time for the inside back cover. You'll just need 2 pieces of cardstock, one piece that's 7 by 5 1/2, and one piece that's 8 by 3 1/2. The 8 by 3 1/2, put the 8-inch side at the top of the scoreboard, score it at 1/2 inch and at 7 1/2, rotate it and score it at 1/2 inch. This other piece, the 7 by 5 1/2, with the 5 1/2 side at the top, score at 1/2 inch. And I am going to take my corner rounder and round the bottom. I like my flaps to have the corners rounded. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that it actually is a flap. I don't know, just one of those weird things. You don't have to if you don't want to. I'll miter and miter. And I'll miter the top pocket here and miter right across the score lines because it's a pocket. And fold and burnish on those score lines for all 3 of those pieces. Fold and burnish here. And then we'll add this to the book. So I'll take the pocket, add it to the bottom of the page. Now make sure you go justified over to the right hand side. You don't want this getting in the way of the back cover closing. So just make sure you stay away from this channel where the covers meet, the cover and the spine. So I think here I am going to take a little scrap of paper and use that. You could use tape. I'm just going to glue this down just to cover that so it makes things flow easy. And if your book is really chunky, if you add lots of chunky features, you might just want to use the cellophane tape. Cellophane, that's an antiquated word, isn't it? Scotch tape, we'll use the brand name. You might want to just use Scotch tape. All right, I will burnish. And there's that. And I'm going to turn this on the side. Add some glue. Add this to the top of the page. Again, stay far to the right. And line it up with the very top of the book. And then for this one, I'm going to use 2 circle closures. So you'll put it on your decorative paper with a brad and, yeah, or an eyelet. You don't have to use a brad. And so that is making the book. Now, I'm going to go ahead and decorate it. I'm not going to give you measurements because people want to do it differently. I will make my pages. I'll cut the paper 1/8 of an inch smaller of my surface and put it on that way. I like a very small margin. Some people will do 1/4 of an inch and have 1/8 of an inch all around it. Whatever works for you. I've done other videos showing you how I decorate it. I do like putting the pages in the book to decorate it. I've tried doing it where you make the pages and then decorate it and then put it in the book. But things don't flow as smoothly to me. Like I'll forget what I'm putting here and coordinate the paper here. You know, it's just how I do things. But you can do it the way you want to do it. And that is it. That is the tutorial on how I made this little mini album. If you'd like, go ahead and I will be doing a guide in my coffee shop. It will be available for purchase. I do have it for a nominal fee. I don't charge a lot of money, but it's just something you can print out. You don't have to do it. You can just write the measurements down as you watch this video over again. But some people like it all printed out and have a checklist that you can follow along. All right, that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fabulous day.